Hi, I'm Peter Capaldi. I play the Doctor, and you're watching EMS Productions.
Hello everybody, and welcome on to today's video where I thought I'd just give you guys a quick sort of final look back and a look over Series 10 to just give you my final thoughts on the whole series. So today guys, I thought in this video, rather than doing a sort of full-on review of the series, I thought as I've done that for every single episode so far, it made sense to just kind of do a summary video, a few of my final thoughts on the series as a whole, where it kind of fits in compared to other series, some of my favourite episodes, just some, final thoughts on the series. And overall I would say it was a very enjoyable series. It was a different sort of series to Series 9 certainly, and I think personally for me, I know this goes against a lot of other people would say, I still prefer Series 9 to Series 10. It just didn't quite catch the imagination from me quite so much in this series compared to Series 9. I think a lot of that was just down to the Doctor-Clara relationship, which I was significantly invested in, which I wasn't quite so much with the Doctor and Bill and Noel to some degree in this series, so I think that did make a difference there in terms of sort of the character-wise. And then I also enjoyed having two-part stories a little bit more in Series 9, which was kind of lacking in this series. Other than the finale and the slightly failed Monk trilogy, that was it for multi-part stories. So I think it would be nice if maybe there'd just been another two-parter in there somewhere that kind of just made a slightly more event story out of it. Because I think that was the thing with this series. There was a lot of individual episodes, but it felt like quite a lot of them were sort of a bit insignificant, a bit bog standard. There wasn't anything linking them. They were just kind of a standalone episode you look at. The pilot had a bit more going on, but then past that, Smile, Thin Ice, Knock Knock, those three episodes are all just standalone sort of bog standard Doctor Who episodes. Then the Monk trilogy happens, well, Oxygen and the Monk trilogy happens, two more pretty standard episodes before the finale. It just, compared to Series 9 where you had the big season opening two-part story with Davros and the Daleks and Missy and all this kind of thing, then a very solid underwater base two-parter as well after that. Then Maisie Williams turning up in another joined sort of story which was going to be fairly significant for the rest of the series. The Zygon two-parter, Sleep No More, well, we forget Sleep No More, and then the three-part finale. So it just felt like, in Series 9, there was a bit more event episodes throughout it, personally I feel, than what we got in Series 10. That's not to say that I did not enjoy Series 10, because I did really enjoy it as a series overall. There wasn't any clangers, there wasn't any absolute terrible episodes in this one, whereas obviously Series 9 had Sleep No More, Series 8 had In the Forest of the Night, and this kind of thing. It was a very consistent series. There were weaker episodes, or ones that I personally didn't enjoy so much, like Knock Knock, like The Eaters of Light, just because either they weren't quite a sort of type of story that appeals to me, or they just felt a little bit kind of like filler episodes, particularly with The Eaters of Light. It just felt sandwiched in there before the finale with not a huge amount going on and nothing that particularly interested me about it. A lot of the focus was on the finale at that stage. And Series 10 did produce some phenomenal episodes as well. I mean, the finale was certainly a highlight for me. I think probably those last two episodes are my favourite two episodes of the series, that two-part finale. It was just so brilliantly crafted. There was a huge amount of elements thrown into there with obviously Missy, the Master, Mandasi and Cybermen, the Doctor, Bill and Nardole as just main characters before you go on to anything else. It was always going to be a challenge to try and pack everything into it, and Stephen Moffat has in the past almost put too much into an episode and then it's kind of fallen apart because they're not actually utilising all the elements of it. But that really just worked in this two-part finale. It was very well built up in the first part, and I think whereas there's been a sort of a problem in a lot of previous finales, it really did sort of get finished off very well, and there was a good resolution in the second part of the episode, which I think just kind of completed the series very well, whereas in some of the previous series it's been left with a slightly sort of lacking and unsatisfying conclusion. I'd also say probably a couple of other highlight episodes would be Oxygen, which I really enjoyed. A very sort of classic, almost classic Doctor Who style space station base under siege invasion story. It was a sort of, it just had a nice sort of eerie, creepy vibe to it on a brilliantly designed spaceship that looked brilliant. And the whole sort of concept that Jimmy Matthews is going to come up with the catalysm in space and sort of paying for your breaths and all this kind of thing, I thought was a really clever idea that hadn't really been explored in Doctor Who before. And obviously we had the Doctor going blind as well within that episode, which was carried very well through the next episode, Extremis, but then kind of disappeared. And Extremis was the other highlight for me. That would be definitely my top four episodes would be the finale, Extremis and Oxygen. Extremis I thought was one of Moffat's sort of strongest outings in a while. Obviously he had an essentially standalone episode to be able to have a go at, and I thought it was just a very interesting idea, a good idea. I have talked about this before, to have this simulation, that a new alien race would sort of create a simulation before they come and take over the world, and we get sort of trickles of information and hints throughout the episode as it builds up to this big reveal that the whole world is a fake, it's a simulation, it's not real. I thought it was very well crafted by Steven by just putting little sort of hints and teasers throughout the episode, so you can kind of put it all together until you get a perfect reveal at the end of it. So I think that was something that he's very strong at writing, and I thought worked very well. So at least that episode on its own in terms of the Monk trilogy. Yes, I'm not going to deny it, the Monk trilogy did kind of fall apart by the end. I've said it in my review of The Lie of the Land, it was a disappointing episode. There's no getting past it. That there was a lot of potential built up which was completely blown apart. We never learned anything about the monks. They didn't even have a line, any of them, in The Lie of the Land. There was nothing at all. They just kind of... There was no reason why they were there to take over. They never told us anything about their backstory or who they were. And then as soon as they were defeated, they just flew away. It just felt a very sort of inconsequential, pointless, generic alien race. There was nothing special about them in the end. And the other big thing that was kind of wasted was the Doctor's blindness as well. That was... it was a really good idea. It was something that had never been done in Doctor Who before. That he suddenly had to try and sort of work out how to be able to see or do different ways of sort of defeating aliens because he's completely blind. And then it also gave a purpose to the sonic sunglasses as well, because suddenly they were ones that allowed him to partially see, and brought out a brilliant episode in Extremis. It really was sort of built around the Doctor not being able to read something naturally. As soon as he goes blind, suddenly he needs to be able to read something. It was a sort of clever way of doing it. But then we get to episode 7, The Pyramid at the End of the World. Yes, he's blind through it. At the end of it, suddenly the monks, by magic, restore his sight, and then boom, we forget about it. It's not mentioned again in the whole series, and there's not one reference to it again. It's just feel completely wasted, completely forgotten about again. It was just frustrating that it was so quickly and disappeared and gone and forgotten about. So that was some of the more negative points and episodes, I guess, of this series. But certainly the highlights were the main 3 characters, the main cast. They were sort of phenomenal. I mean, Bill was introduced as a brilliant new companion. She was very different to Clara, but I thought it just had a very fresh feel to it. I remember when I first watched the pilot, I'm sure if you go back and watch my review, I'll pretty much say this, it just felt so new, so fresh, so different at the time. It felt like we really were starting again. It just had a different vibe to it. The music was all done very differently. The direction was a little bit different. They had a new companion there, a new character, and it just really felt very new, which I thought was really good at the time. But it did... I don't know, maybe this is just me, but it personally felt like we slipped back a little bit more through the series, almost back into previous series, in the way the sort of storytelling became and some of the way Moffat went off with different tangents and episodes and everything, whereas the series started so fresh, it felt like by the end of it we're getting back to the previous Moffat, back properly into the normal Moffat era, I guess you would call it, which is something I enjoy, but it just, yeah, sort of felt after we'd started with something new, it all went back to normal. But yes, Bill's brilliant, I thought, in this series. Pearl Mackie portrayed her fantastically. She was just a normal human being, which was quite nice as a very different sort of choice to Clara. There was nothing special about her to start off with, but then she naturally sort of developed really well through the series. And then we see that she's able to sort of fight off being a Cyberman completely in that last episode. And I thought got a satisfying conclusion and her reward at the end of the series by being to go and join Heather, sort of just travel the stars as atoms, essentially, for the rest of the time. I thought that was a very nice, satisfying end for her. And obviously, unexpected success of the series has got to go to Nardole, played by Matt Lucas. I mean, everybody hated him before he came in. Personally, I was always optimistic because I like Matt Lucas as a sort of an actor and a comedian. I always find him quite funny. So he didn't have a great role in the Husbands River song initially, but that was kind of because he was just going to be a minor side character, and it didn't make a lot of sense at the time why he'd come back in. But I think once he really had something to do and sort of Moffat focused on writing him a bit more, he did become the best surprise of the series. He was just so much better than I think everybody expected. He wasn't just comic relief. He really did have a purpose and a sort of point in being there. Obviously, he was mainly involved with guarding the vaults. Along with the Doctor, he was sort of tasked with that, to do that with them. But just towards the end of the series, it really felt he took on some sort of authority throughout it, and really kind of had to go off and kind of lead some groups of people or help Bill out and this kind of thing later in the series, splitting off from the Doctor, rather than just being that sort of comedy sidekick, which I won't deny, he was that early on in the series. There was a little bit, particularly in sort of the first 2-3 episodes, where he was just, there for the comedy. I mean, well, to be fair, he didn't even turn up much in the first 5 episodes, but once he got there properly, I think from Oxygen onwards was when he really became a sort of much more well-rounded, significant and actually relevant character for the rest of the series, and I thought that was really good. And he got a really satisfying conclusion as well by sort of, he'd reached his end point with the Doctor, it was time for him to go off and do something else, and now he's going to go and look after all these children, sort of. He's coming a little Doctor-ish in that sense, and I think that was a really nice development of his character through the series. And then of course we have the Doctor, portrayed by Peter Capaldi, in his final series. What more can be said other than he's just amazing. If you watch my videos, you know that I think Peter Capaldi is the best Doctor. He is my favourite Doctor, the best Doctor there's ever been in my opinion. He just sort of has that real gravitas and can just sort of pull off the part so brilliantly, and just kind of some of the sort of speeches he makes, the performances he puts in, it's just absolutely phenomenal. I really can't understate that, and sort of how painful it is now to watch that sort of the finale as he's kind of fighting off his regeneration, really struggling. He doesn't want to change. I thought that was a nice way to sort of bring towards his regeneration, that he's gone through the pain of regeneration so many times. He just doesn't want it to happen again. And I'll also give a shout out to Missy, who was probably at her best in this series, I think, played by Michelle Gomez. It really was a nice kind of concept and idea of the Missy, or the martyr, starting to turn good, and kind of the Doctor trying to help her really become good again, or good for the first time since they were kids, really. And it was a lovely sort of development. We were always a little bit sceptical as whether it would actually happen, and in the end, it does happen. But the Doctor's point of view, it doesn't happen. He doesn't know about that, so that was a sort of really tragic way to finish off the series, but it was really nicely sort of developed through it. I mean, there was obviously the kind of slightly failed the Vault concept. I mean, it was good to get discussion going and everything early in the series. It was sort of an interesting idea and something a little bit different, that who's going to be in the Vault, and sort of had us all talking for the first up to Extremis, but then it was the most obvious choice that literally we guessed. I'd say 90% of people guessed that in episode 1. Certainly in episode 3, as soon as there was the knocking and banging and the Doctor going in, that was it. Boom, we knew it was Missy. So it was kind of, they made it a little bit too obvious maybe. But then it was nicely developed in her arc from that point on, where she was kind of trapped with the Doctor and really starting to kind of being trapped in that Vault, and the Doctor just trying to make her realise all the bad things that she does and why it'd be better to be good. And so overall, I think I would say that this has been a very enjoyable series, Series 10. It has been certainly one of the better ones since the revival. I know this is going against a lot of fan opinion, but as I said, it's not probably my personal favourite. I would put maybe, I think Series 9, Series 5, maybe Series 1, maybe Series 4 above it, but certainly Series 10 tops Series 6, 7 and 8, no, hands down, Series 2 and 3 as well. So it's certainly sort of in my top 3 or 4 series. It was just a very consistently good series with a couple of highlights like Oxygen Extremis, the opener and the finale. With some unfulfilled potential like the Monk Trilogy, which really petered out, and some slightly sort of bog standard and less inspiring episodes early on like Smile, Thin Ice and Knock Knock, or The Eaters of Light towards the end as well. So, but there was no absolute terrible episodes, which was something nice to have for a series. But I wish we had another series of Peter Capaldi. He's just been so brilliant in these 3 series. I don't agree with all the people who say that he's had terrible writing. He hasn't had terrible writing. Yes, there's been ups and downs. Yes, Series 8 wasn't the strongest, but certainly from Series 9 and Series 10, he's been brilliant. Just across the board brilliant. I can't state it enough, really. But there we go, guys. I think that just about wraps up everything I have to say about Series 10. I'm sure there'll be other things that pop into my head, but I feel like it's time to sort of close this chapter on this series now. It's been a really enjoyable one to have a new TARDIS team, have Peter Capaldi's final full series, lots of great episodes, but it's time to close the chapter. And so we look ahead to Christmas. It feels such a long way away now, and then it'll only be 1 episode before another long break, but you'll know it'll come around eventually. It won't be too long before we build up to Peter Capaldi's final ever episode. A new Doctor, I'm sure, will be announced relatively soon, so that'll be something to talk about. And the start of filming of Chris Chibnall's new series as well in Series 11 next year. So there'll still be a huge amount to talk about. But that's it from my Series 10 sort of review and final thoughts video. Do let me know in the comments below what you thought of Series 10 as a whole. Did you enjoy it? Is it your favourite series? Or do you prefer some other ones? Do let me know what you thought in the comments below. But that's it, guys. Remember to like the video, subscribe if you're new here, and I will see you again very, very soon for another video. Goodbye.